Hey gang, hang on here. That can go away. Yeah. That go away. Sorry, I'm a bit late. We had a little bit of a code problem, but we solved it. All right. Well, hey folks, Jeff Salzman here, and welcome to the Daily Evolver. Today, in honor of Valentine's Day, I am going to focus on the affairs of the heart. And I am going to share a really interesting conversation that I had with Dr. Tom Habib, who's been on the Daily Evolver a couple times. And he is an integrally inspired clinical psychologist specializing in couples therapy. He's been doing it for a long time. And he has mapped what he calls the couples line of development, which describes the predictable stages of growth that a couple can go through and also where they can get stalled. So just to briefly walk up his model, the adventure of love generally starts with this first stage, safety and attraction, which is a stage of sexual chemistry, this illusion that I finally found the person who's going to complete me. And, that's sort of early love. And a lot of people get stuck there and they do it relationship after relationship, and they don't really want to move on beyond that because it's pretty intoxicating. The second stage is the stage that he calls the roles stage. And that is where a couple becomes committed to each other and they seek to build a life together and they sort of map out the roles. And generally, traditionally, the roles are the male is the breadwinner, female in the house and children and mother and father. And that is a stage that healthy couples go through. And then there's the third stage, once the roles are well established, where we move into what Tom calls the relational stage. And this is the stage of partnership that is based on flexible roles and mutual respect. And this is kind of analogous to the green stage of development. And a lot of people listening to this podcast are in a relationship of that at that stage, or at least we have, our head up in it, or maybe we're waist deep in it or whatever. But this is a place where a lot is happening for people at sort of leading edge of development, where we're moving out of green and we want to move into the next stage, which is what he calls the first love stage. That's the fourth stage, but it's called first love. And this corresponds with integral development and is created by having an active appreciation for one's partner and the intentional development of a we space where more aspects of both partners is embraced. And so there's that. And then there's spiritual love, where we grow beyond personal identification and find the eternal beloved. And I don't know about that one. Working on it, have had glimpses. So again, most of us have a big part of our, developmental probability cloud hovering around this green relational equality kind of flexible stage. And today, Tom is going to talk about how to make that stage really work for you. And it turns out that the way to do that was very counterintuitive to me, at least. And that is to regress, to use that container that you've developed of mutual respect to allow each other to regress into what he calls a child, a healthy child. Also sometimes an unhealthy child. but to get into a conscious regression where we can bring the juice of these earlier stages back online. And that's all I'll say for now. So let's just get into the talk. And thank you for joining me. And I think this will go for about a little bit less than an hour.
I want to show you first, up front, here's our couples line. And for most of you that have seen the previous presentations, the couples line comes in 5 stages. And it starts at safety and attraction. It moves to the role stage when reality hits. If you hit the relational stage, the 3rd stage, you're doing really well. And that's what we're going to work on today, strengthening that stage, because that's the lattice upon which you can float into first love, the 4th stage. And then finally, the 5th stage is spiritual love. But what we're going to look at is the relational stage today. So if people want to take a look at the other stages, on Valentine's Day a year ago, you and I did getting from relational to first love. And then in October, we looked at contrasting first love with spiritual love. Mm-hmm. So people that want to take a look at that can go back and look. But today we're going to look at the relational stage.
And Tom, just to sort of anchor it in our framework understanding, when you talk about the safety and attraction, that's that first stage, which is akin in a way to a pre-traditional stage. It's where you just want somebody that'll take care of you, and that's what you want. And then you move to, am I off track here?
No, you have it. That's where the chemistry is. It's a little bit projective speculation.
Yeah, right. And then we move into the next stage, which, what do you call it again?
The role stage.
All right. So mom, dad, breadwinner, homemaker, sort of a traditional stage. Mm-hmm. And then we move into what you call the relational stage,
which didn't come online till the mid-60s. It correlates with the green stage, postmodernism.
Yeah, and that's what we're working on today. This relational stage, after we've had our roles and everything, we got that all stabilized, then we move into a stage where we are relating to each other as equals.
We're relating to each other as equals. The cream is rising to the top. It's actually egalitarian, where we're given and taken. We don't need the security of roles so much. Although I found it funny, when my wife outrun me one year, I actually walked around going, I'm a kept man. I'm a kept man.
Well, that's right. It's not like those earlier stages go away. There's a new stage comes online that sort of works with them. But those other stages are there, and they can just pop out at any time.
They certainly do. And Christine was going, yeah, you better behave. I'm going to run you out if you don't.
Right, exactly. All right. So here we are then in this stage. And so got it.
So if I can move on.
Yep.
What I want to do, that's what we're working on. We're going to do a deep dive here, and we're going to show the lattice upon which creates the circuitry that can handle that level of intensity that's going to arise.
All right, just in a nutshell.
I want to build a concept called regression. So you can think of regression in intimacy as baby talk, certain types of cuddling, different levels of vulnerability, perhaps with a sense of urgency if you're panicking a little bit. And any way or the other, an immediate need for attention. So regression's a trend to a younger state and feeling, to re-experience one's younger self. And Jung wrote this in an attempt to get at something necessary. So, like anything, there's good regression and there's really bad regression that I'm going to show. So, as we just mentioned, regression is what uniquely characterizes intimacy. The larger world doesn't want to deal with that level of yourself. You only get to do limited regression with your friendships, for example, in the expression certainly of sexual feelings, but even disappointment and anger, you'll yell at Chuck a lot quicker than you would do somebody else in life. Mm-hmm. Do you find that true, Jeff?
Yeah, we don't do a lot of yelling, I got to say, but there's a level of intimacy that I have with Chuck that is even close to anything that I have with other people. So,
right.
Yeah.
But even the irritability will come out quicker.
Irritability we do,
Right, we all do. And
yeah.
I mean, that's part of the gift of the intimacy is we get to regress into that and experience ourselves more whole, not necessarily always our higher self, as we've said before.
All right, so what we're doing here is we're regressing, and you're saying that regression is a sort of a gift of intimacy.
It absolutely is. It makes us healthy. Regression and dependency go hand in hand.
Right. So when we're regressing, we're going back to baby talk. We're going back to cuddling. We're going back to even this ugly part, the irritability and anger and that kind of stuff. The container of our intimacy is really the only place, or it's the deepest place that we can have for these basically our earlier stages.
Absolutely. That's why it's so important. Dependency goes hand in hand with regression, and we're going to really look at dependency today. Do you do it well or do you not do it well? Not doing it well is anger. Doing it well is identifying that subtle feeling, being able to hold that place without expressing anger. So I wanted to show you, this is not good regression. And for those of you on audio right now, it's a picture of a woman running over her husband with a car. And this was an article out of the Associated Press. Angry wife runs down husband after church. He looked at another woman in church, and she decided to run him over in the church parking lot. That's not good regression.
Right.
I always wonder what the pastor said the next week.
I know, really. How do you come back from that?
So, moving along to build this thought, when one regresses, it's initiated with a more or less reasonable expectation that your intimate partner will respond accordingly.
Yep.
The intensity of this, the method has to be down to contain this. So, it is how these needs and desires are enacted in the context of vulnerability and perceived danger that creates problems, Susan Johnson said. When you think about what she said here, you can see that she doesn't have a line of development. She's assuming the vulnerability is the same for all of us. And you and I know when you certainly get to the relational stage or to first love, it's not as dangerous. There's an interior familiarity going on, right? And the ability to self-soothe that I can show up in a transparency and I'm enjoying it with that person.
Right.
But a lot of people, especially in my area, they're theorizing without the verticality of a developmental level.
Right.
This is just one small quote showing the limitation of doing such thing.
Right.
So can I move on?
Well, actually, Tom, could you just sum up what that was? I'm still not sure I get it. What's she saying versus what you're saying?
Okay. It's not that. Let me bring that back up so people watching can see it. She's saying when somebody shows vulnerability, how it's enacted, how it shows up between a couple.
Mm-hmm.
Are they moaning when you go into that space? Are they responding with something as harsh as, she's not again? Or does the person show up empathically, doing reflective listening, agreeing, keeping their own stuff out of that moment,
Mm-hmm.
Is there an enactment that creates a container upon which a person can show up with transparency and vulnerability?
What you're making me think about is, okay, so we have this situation here where we want to be able to regress, because what a wonderful thing that is. And yet we really just don't want to wallow in that, or we don't want to give just a green light to every aspect of that. The woman hitting her husband with the car, for sure, but also there's a red flag that arises for me. Okay. That I'm going to enable somebody's worst habits if I am always available, or how we calibrate with each other. How much we're willing to take, how much we're willing to give. It's a two-way street, right, Tom? I guess.
Oh, absolutely. But you're hitting a couple points we're going to talk about in a moment. One is the quality of the regression. Remember we said anger is regression, but it's not qualitatively that helpful.
Right. Okay, got it.
Can I move a little bit?
Yeah, you bet.
So, some questions I want to ponder at this point when we're talking about regression to get our dependency needs met. We look at who regresses when in the relationship. What's the quality of the regression? Now, we just said that anger is not a qualitative regression. Is it reciprocal? Can both members of the dyad of the relationship regress? Some relationships, you get one person that can't do it at all. They're doing it vicariously with their spouse. How does the couple signal the exchange of opportunity to regress? This is crucial, because we don't want them to regress together. That's a mess.
Good point.
You'll see this.
Tom, I got to say, just as you're sort of opening this up to me, I appreciate that you're giving some context and container and instructions in how to do this, starting with the fact that this is a marker of an intimate relationship. I hadn't really thought about it that way. And to be able to actually regress. I mean, I talk a lot about how at Integral we want to reintegrate the earlier stages. Mm-hmm. I mean, good Lord, what an amazing vehicle for doing this with an intimate partner who you have a deal, and you get good at facilitating this with each other.
Absolutely. I'm glad you see that subtlety, because there's an academic paper people can go on drtomhabib.com to read on this issue specifically. And when I was doing the research on that, Freud always characterized regression as pathological. That it meant you were decompensating into a pathology. But it was Jung and a few other writers that said it isn't always pathological. But it's remarkable how little of attention this has been given. But you can see, as you just said, Jeff, it's Integral that kind of pulls the holism of it. It's not transcend and exclude, it's transcend and include as usual.
Right, yeah.
So, okay, to keep going. Do they both regress at the same moment, we said, which we don't want? Is dependency avoided by either person? And that happens quite a bit. What is the quality of the nurturance when the other partner is regressing? And I think you get a feel for where I'm headed now. So what I want to do from here, I want to set this up like I'm really working with a couple in therapy. I'm going to do a heterosexual relationship, but it applies to everyone. And I'm going to have the man on the left side and the woman on the right side. And they're going to be on one column. There's going to be an A on top, a C on bottom. That's all it is. On the right side, an A on top and a C on bottom. So just visualize that kind of quadrant. And I'm going to draw lines between it. And I'll make enough reference so you can visualize it as we go along. And if I don't, Jeff, help me with it.
Will do.
So we start life so dependent when we're born and we're young, we don't even know we're dependent. When we need something, what do? We scream. From our perspective, we had a need and the need is met. From mom's perspective, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. She elbowed dad, asked him to get out of bed. He said, no way. She muttered unsavory things under her breath as she walked down the hallway, stuck her fingers in the diaper, said not wet, checked the clothing, not hot, stuck a bottle in their mouth, hungry. Doesn't look very magical to me, but that's important that we state that. So remember the dependency? I want to talk about dependency as C, C for child. So I just put a C up on the screen on the left side and the bottom. I'm only using that word descriptively. Remember, it's transcend and include. This is what you get to do in intimacy. But part of raising a child is getting them to be able to take increasing responsibility, to push their immediate needs aside. Like if I was really impulsive, I'd eat pizza every night of the week. But since I have other goals in life, I don't do that. And so all along the way, when we're being raised developmentally, we're learning how to delay gratification, how to be there for other people, how to set long-term goals, manage anxiety. When we have that online, we're A. Now I just dropped an A in. That's the adult. You have a sense of that. Some of our previous discussion, we were talking about when we're coming from us C in the relationship and when we're coming more from the adult in the relationship. So now I'm dropping in the right side. We have the 2 A's on top, male, female, and the 2 C's on bottom. Does this make sense so far, Jeff?
Yeah, so basically what we're doing is we say there's a heterosexual couple, male, female, and they both have an adult and a child.
I just made the both C's red. This is what characterizes intimacy above all else, is coping with the intensity of this C. But what am I looking for? So I drew a line between the male C and her A. When he's at C, she needs to be at A, because in this sequence, it's complementarity. She's there for his vulnerability and dependency. And at A, she can only do 2 things. One is reflectively listen, and number 2 is to agree to do something he might have asked for. So to reflectively listen means, I like this absurd example of it. If Christine was doing a really bad C, all right, let me get this straight, Christine. You're saying I'm self-centered, it's always about me, I don't consider you. Did I miss anything? Oh, I'm a moron also? Now, I'm being absurd there, but I'm with you. If you, even your bad C, I'm hanging in there with you for 4 minutes to be able to help you get on top of it and feel my presence there. Okay, so I'm looking for that. When he's at C, she needs to be at A. And as you would anticipate, I'm looking for the exact opposite. When she's at C, he's at A. Now I have a line between the 2 A's. This is when you're on the way to the airport and you're late and there's nothing you can do about it. This is where you get your backs together and you get through those moments. You've got to be able to be at A to A.
Yeah, adult to adult.
Yeah, because you got your backs together. If you have children, the children are fighting in the back of the car. One of you touched the other, or you're with relatives, and you're kind of signaling each other, we're going to get through this moment.
Right.
You're both at your strength. And we never want this.
Child to child.
C to C, child to child. There's a line between C and C. Can you visualize what this feels like, Jeff?
Yeah. Yeah. It's we all have been there. Certainly as children and too often as adults. Where you're just in a pissing match with somebody.
We've all been there. It's certainly true.
Yeah.
When you think of that, the C to C, there's no adults in the room. This is where couples tear their relationship apart. They're both desperate. You never listen to me, and you don't care. It's always about you. You're always attacking me, and you don't care about me. I mean, they're in a lot of pain, and nobody's there. And perhaps exhaustion will cause them to at least get away from each other, at that point. But this is where people wreck their relationship.
Well, yeah, and it could take all kinds of forms. You could have both people screaming. You could have one person screaming and the other person just completely shut down. You could have two people shut down.
Absolutely.
In a way that is just painful, but nothing's moving, nothing's happening.
Right. The task of the relationship is always to do this. And there's got to be that flow that we're building in right now.
And the flow is that we're flowing between one person being the adult while the other's the child, vice versa. Yep. Or the other thing we also like is the adult to adult.
Absolutely. And when it's necessary, we want adult to adult too.
Yeah.
And that's an ongoing thing. When we're in interaction, that has to be readily available. So you can see why I'm creating an argument. This is what stabilizes the relational stage. And without it, you can see the chaos that's going to ensue.
Yep.
So to move on, I have the AC back up for people. And all I'm showing here is the flow going back and forth and how it can manage regression. And we want to build flexible complementary relationships. So here I have the AC back up, and I have a line drawn with the male at A and the female at C. I got a question for you, Jeff. Speculate if the relationship's stuck in this configuration with the man in A and the woman in C. What would you speculate about that relationship?
It's not a very happy one, ultimately.
No. But why would they? Do you have any sense of why they would form this relationship?
Well, it's not it's sort of a standard early stage relationship. The man's in charge and the female should submit to the man.
Right. So moving on, this relationship's called rigid because it doesn't flex, complementary because it is, traditional, the very language you use, Jeff.
Yep.
Rigid, complementary, traditional. I actually developed this before I got into Integral, and I was so happy with the alignment.
Yeah.
And the unconscious collusion here is the male finds comfort in saying to the woman, if you don't make me feel vulnerable and impotent, I won't make you grow up and be strong. It's very traditional and it's what feels comfortable. But in time, he's going to be really disappointed with her, even though he fashioned this relationship. If another woman comes along and appeals to his C and says, you poor honey, whoever takes care of you, whoever does anything for you, he's going to be like a bear all over honey, because for the first time, he's getting a vital need met, and then she ends up in my office in absolute crisis. And, the goal becomes, really getting her to get up to A. That becomes my intervention, is to get up to A, because you can see he's worn out at that level. Even though he was a co-author, unconscious co-author of this, he cannot handle it.
Right. So you're, helping the woman to move into her adult role.
She's suddenly more attractive. She's going to be able to fill a vital role in him. So likewise, speculate about if the relationship's stuck in this direction. Any thoughts?
Where the female's the adult and the male's the child? Well, you see it a lot on Judge Judy. These women who are taken over by these men who become dependent on them, and they're looking for a mommy, and that ain't no fun either. Over time, certainly.
Absolutely. This one is rigid, complementary, non-traditional. I like the languaging of it. I find in practice, this is the professional woman that's battled her way to power and competence and respect. And if she makes the mistake of picking kind of a teddy bear type guy, what initially feels comfortable and attractive, she ends up hating him. It loses that polarity, that chemistry that it needs when it's rigid, complementary, non-traditional, because he's just not raising it. So a lot of times I tell these women to go home and from your best damsel, ask them for something. I'll never forget the woman that said, Dr. B, did you call my husband, talk to him? No, I wouldn't do that without your permission. I can't believe it. He's walking around like he's a stud. And I said, well, you did it, didn't you? Yeah. So
Right.
it's kind of fun when you start playing
With
this.
her moving into the child role.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what she
Vulnerable and, seductive or whatever it might be.
did. Yep.
Yeah.
So another example of that is a woman, a professional woman I was working with. I gave her the assignment to do a damsel, ask a guy for some help. I always tell them, watch men. They just love that damsel. And so she's on the airline. She's trying to get that bag up in the overhead bin. She turns around and she goes, can you help me with this? And the guy explodes out of his seat to help her. And so she sits down. It was only an hour flight here in California. And she said, I could feel him wanting to get out of the seat the rest of the flight to help me. And of course, we know what that is. When a woman allows us to do that, we feel strong and powerful and competent. But the other thing is, it's the feminine reminds us in life what's important, the community, the love, taking care of that. We don't always get that from guys. We get that from the feminine. So when a woman brings that online and with great intention, it's just such a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to say my green alarms are going off.
Okay.
Because and I think the great intention that you just said is really key here, because there's, and I could just feel there's women out there listening to this saying, you want me to be a damsel in distress again after 2 millennia of me being stuck in that role? And the answer is yes, actually, because the polarity and the juice is not in the homogenization of both parties. It's in a flexibility and an ability to move around and each take those roles in ways that, are re-enchanting and revivifying.
Absolutely. My understanding in early feminism, when we actually thought we're going to do androgyny, and my understanding of androgyny was there was going to be no differences between the sexes. It was the woman that first went, yuck, because they couldn't stand those men.
Well, I would just testify myself as a gay guy in a gay relationship, having been in 3 very significant long-term gay relationships, my 3rd here in its 8th year. And these forces, these energetics, polarities between masculine and feminine, are very, very flexible. They're not limited to our gender.
Absolutely. And the deeper we get into this, we're going to find more opportunity for deepening it along all that flexibility you just touched upon. I mean, we're just at the beginning of all of this.
Yeah.
So we already did speculate about stuck at sea.
And stuck at sea means both people coming from child.
Thank you. And that's an absolute disaster. I can hear these people from the parking lot coming to my waiting room. I mean, they're just going at it. They're ripping their relationship apart versus stuck at A. Can you envision a relationship stuck at A, Jeff?
Absolutely. That's adult to adult. And, that's probably gets a little, I was going to say flaccid at some point. Right?
Absolutely. It's dead. In fact, I only saw in 34 years of practice, I've seen 4 couples stuck at A. They were both engineers, and the presenting problem was there's no passion in our relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, it was beautiful. They came in self-diagnosed and everything.
Uh-huh.
And you could feel it. They were so intimidated by the intensity of C that it was going to destroy their interaction that they avoided it like a plague.
Yeah. Well, I was in a relationship that was adult to adult, and it became sexless after 5 years, and went on another 5 years. It fell apart. It's a long story, but I found my way to a relationship where I could be a child.
Wow, I never thought of that. But between 2 men, that probably would reoccur more frequently.
Yeah, perhaps so. Yeah.
The socialization that you would actually get stuck at.
Yeah, yeah, because we both have the same socialization.
Right.
We're individuals within that, but the socialization's the same. Yeah.
So I want to add one more concept so we can fill out the relationship diagnostics on it. And it's the issue of power. Power in systems theory is the ability to influence. Who has the greatest influence in the relationship? And it can either be power at C or power at A. Ideally, we want power to be balanced in the relationship. So, just a couple examples. I once had a woman drag her husband in because he got caught looking at erotica online. Now, these were very traditional people, and to her, it was an absolute shock. It obviously told me, as soon as I spoke with her on the phone, she had the power in the relationship. She's the one I had to empathize with to even get on ground zero with her, and empathize with the feeling of it. It felt like disloyalty. It might have felt like sin to a traditionalist. And then the other one is presenting problem was a wife lying all the time. But when I looked at it, it was self-preservation, that she was so afraid to his reaction. Does that give you a sense of what I'm talking about in terms of power?
Yeah. Yeah. So power in a relationship can be exercised from either the adult or the child.
Absolutely. And
yeah.
That's where we're going to.
Right.
So to move on this, I'm going to test you, Jeff, to see if you're paying attention. So I have a series of things I'm going to read, and I'm going to see if Jeff can get them right.
Okay.
The answers are what they say. Are they at A or C?
Okay.
So the first one's a woman saying, "Where were you? Why didn't you call if you knew you weren't going to make the office party?" Is she at A or C?
I think A. I think she's being an adult.
That's wrong. That's C. She's at C because she's asking for her needs to be met. She's asking, she has a concern. So can you feel that in there?
Yeah.
So here's his response to that. "I was late because of last minute calls at work. You know how bad things are this time of year."
Well, I would think that would be I don't know. I was so wrong last time. I would say that is an adult. Probably not though, right?
This is C again. The reason is he's asking her to understand his problem. "I was late because of last minute calls at work. You know how bad things are this time of year. It's not his turn." She's at C. He's taking away that opportunity. He needs to focus on her at this point.
Okay.
The rules is who's ever at C first keeps it until they're done.
All right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So let's try another one.
Okay.
"You're right. I should have called."
Oh, that's an adult.
That's A, because
Yep.
she's focused on her. So let's keep going. "I wanted to talk to you about my visit to the doctors for my mammogram." This is the woman, obviously.
That's an adult.
Feel again, Jeff.
I wanted to talk to you about my visit to the doctors for my mammogram.
Yeah.
That is a child. Because,
absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, she's going to be emotional, and if you can get attuned to that, you're going to be in a lot better shape that night.
Okay.
"Sure. I know how you must be feeling. It must be like how I felt waiting for my chest x-ray to come back." Now, where's the focus, Jeff?
It's on him.
Which puts him at?
Child.
Child. So can you see how subtle this is?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm having to recalibrate what child means because, I've sort of been thinking that it meant that it was immature and chaotic. And you have a broader definition, perhaps, of somebody who just has a need that they want met.
Absolutely.
And it could be completely legitimate.
Yeah.
And so that actually is helpful because it's helping me to re-legitimize the child piece, which is sort of the thesis of this whole episode in a way, is that in an intimate relationship, we can be needy.
Absolutely. Child is not a pejorative term. It's only descriptive. But reading the subtlety where people are emotionally and responding in a reciprocal way is, is the structure that we're really kind of working on right now. So he responds to her visit to the doctors. How did it go? A or C?
So she's once again asks, I want to do my talk to you about my mammogram. And so his answer is, how did it go? That's adult, right? He's focused on her.
Absolutely. That's safe.
Okay, good.
Don't you just hate going to the doctor? If he says that.
If he says, don't you just hate going to the doctor?
Where's the attention getting drawn?
It's to her, but it, I don't know. It doesn't seem like the right thing to say, but I guess I'll give it an adult. Child. Okay.
He's asking for affirmation in that moment. So here's a new set.
All right. So this is a new test now.
Yep. New test. I think you're 1 out of 6, Jeff. You're going to have to do better, or otherwise I got to flunk you in this course.
Yeah, I know. No kidding.
So a new test. She's saying, you can't get anything right. Are you brain damaged? You screw everything up.
Okay. That's a C. That's a child.
It's not a good quality C.
Right.
But it's a C.
Yep.
He's fuming. Don't call me brain damaged.
Yeah, that would be a child too.
Yeah.
So we have a child-child dynamic going here.
Yep. Very familiar.
Yep.
Now be careful on this one. This one's in parentheses. His response to her calling him brain damaged, he's silent until the rage is vented.
Oh, until her, okay.
She yelled, she called him brain damage.
Okay.
Everything up, and he's just staying in silence.
All right. He's going to wait until she's done.
But his body language.
Is he's very angry faced. So that would be a child.
Right. So here the answer is question mark. Because if he's angry or he looks like he's under attack, hiding under the couch, he's at C. But if he's just holding the space for her and, waiting it out a little bit, then he's at A. That's why I put a question mark on that one. Make sense?
Yeah, got it.
Calm down. Let me explain. I tried to get Joey to pick up the playroom, but he had a report due tomorrow.
All right. I'm learning that is a child because he's talking about his position, not hers.
Yep. As soon as you're talking about yourself, you're not there for your spouse. When Christy and I first started doing the relationship, we'd get into these things, and I would see her going to A for me, and I'd end up kind of smiling, seeing the structure go into place while I was in C, which was kind of ironic, and it almost became a gift though, because she was consciously going there.
Yeah.
For me at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, Chuck and I do that. We're always commenting on our relationship and how the dynamics are shifting. We're aware of that. And it's great to be in a relationship where that is easily talked about.
Do you have some of this flexible complementary built in?
Totally. Absolutely. We both move from adult to child very easily. And it's great.
How do you signal each other that it's the other person's turn?
Oh, maybe it's a touch or a cuddle, that kind of a thing, or a joke, but mostly just flows naturally. I'll have a complaint or I'll be in some sort of a state and he'll take an adult role there rather than get into it with me. And I appreciate it a lot. And I tell him I appreciate it.
Right, because you guys clearly have relational, solid, and you're probably good purveyors of first love.
Yeah, I think we got relational pretty solid. I do. Yeah. The relational stage.
And at first love, you read into subtlety so well that you don't need this conscious structuring as much. It's kind of built in to the discourse, and you're kind of doing it. So you might go, you're coming out of scene, you might go, well, how do you feel about it?
Yeah.
And he knows he can weigh in at that point.
Totally.
It becomes automatic.
Yeah.
But you can feel a lot of couples struggle.
Yeah.
Because they form an answer in their mind that's counteracting what their spouse just said, and they're throwing the relationship into CC.
Yeah, when I think of my relationships, what Chuck and I have, in my early relationships, that wasn't achievable. could we have grown into it? Perhaps. Because Chuck and I have the benefit of getting together both in our late 50s. So we're pretty well cooked. And, we don't have a whole lot of baggage. And that has been a nice sort of reset for both of us. And we can enter at a higher vibe.
Right. You got to thank all the previous people that helped develop.
Exactly. God bless them. Deep appreciation and love. I love them all. I love all my exes.
Let me do one more of these.
Yep.
So we're still on the one where she called him brain damage and you screwed everything up. He goes, calm down. Tell me what's wrong.
That's not going to work. So I'm going to say that's a child.
I'm going to give you a pass on that one because calm down, it depends how it comes across. And somebody else pointed this out.
Yeah, it doesn't really, in my experience, work. Now tell me what's wrong. That's good.
I need to fix this slide because I put it as vague. But I'm going to give you a pass on it because somebody else said the same thing. Calm down can really be incendiary.
Yeah.
And it can be disregarding, the intensity of what they're feeling in that moment.
Exactly.
Now look at this one. He waits till later that evening. Susie, you were really upset this afternoon. Can we talk about whether or not you feel you can depend upon me? I mean, that's clearly an A, isn't it?
Yes.
Because he's totally focused upon her. And I mean, this couple isn't going to come into therapy. If he has that awareness, can we talk about whether or not you feel you can depend upon me? And he's totally focused upon the dynamics that necessarily have to unfold in that moment. So they don't go to therapy, and they're not going to get in a lot of trouble. So are we doing okay time-wise?
Sure. Yeah.
So I want to do the 12 rules of AC. And the first one I already said.
All right. So this is the 12 rules of adult-child dynamics, right? You're calling it AC. Got it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Adult-child dynamics, I call it AC. Whoever gets C first keeps it until they're done.
That's rule number one.
That's rule number one.
Okay. So whoever gets into the child, whoever gets the child rolled, hang on. Whoever gets the child role first keeps it until they're done with it.
Absolutely. And you have to signal them, that you want to go there and you don't take it until they're done, and you do that. Because that creates a stability. You go there, I'm going to be there for you. When you're at the child, you got to know what you want. Most people explode with anger. They feel it viscerally. It's a state experience without stage mediation. And there's stage involvement, but it's a very primitive stage. So they've got to go, what do I want? What do I want? What do I want? So when Christine makes me really upset, in my head, I'm going, Don, why did I marry her? She's dumb. Blah, blah, blah. What do I want? What do I want? You've got to be able to answer that question before you start talking. Can you feel how much stability that alone creates in the relationship?
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes as a child, I just want attention. I just want you to really pay attention to me.
Yeah.
Listen to me.
Simple companionship. It can be simple. I need you to understand what I went through. But if you don't know what you want, you're going to go into that interaction and you're both going to end up down here at C to C.
Got it. Yeah. No, I think that's nice. I mean, as we're sort of civilizing this process of going into conscious regression, where we're, showing all our stuff, a good rule to keep in mind is when you're in the child role, know what it is you want. That's very, very good.
I love that conscious regression.
Yep.
I'm going to borrow that, Jeff, if you don't mind.
Got it.
Anger is always child, but as we've said, it's really poor quality. You've got to be able to identify what you want and wait till the anger fades and you can think again. So this is where the emotional discipline and maturity comes online. There's nothing like intimacy to make you feel like you're under attack when there's a rupture in connection. That's Havel Hendricks' words. There's a rupture in connection. Viscerally, you're going to feel like you're on the Serengeti and your life's at stake. But in reality, you're not. And just knowing that and getting familiar with that rising and being able to modulate it rather quickly, and then look at it as shadow and say, I want to know it. And you recognize what we talked about previously, Jeff. In the higher stages, shadow becomes an opportunity to develop horizontal bandwidth. Whoa, there's more territory here I don't see.
Right, exactly.
But this couple, when anger flashes, it's going visceral before they can noodle it and, really recognize it for what it is. When at A, you can do
Okay, so this is the next one.
Yeah, this is the next one.
This is rule number 4.
Number 4.
Got it.
When at A, you can do 2 things. Now, I told you early in the podcast what the 2 things were. Do you remember one of them?
Yeah. You can reflectively listen. I wrote them down. Or agree to do something that the other person asked for.
That's exactly right. We can always reflectively listen. And even if they're doing a bad C, I tell couples you got to spend 4 minutes on the bad C and hang in there to see if they can calm down a bit. And I always think of that. I spend day in and day out with people in the bad C in therapy.
You're talking about a bad child.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Bad C. If I use C, I mean child.
Yep.
I do it all day long in therapy for people. I'm certainly going to save it for my wife. If she's stressing out, I'm going to hang in there. I can feel her. She's overwhelmed. What can I do to help? I'm going to reflectively listen. I'm going to give her that space. Or the second one is I can agree. Number 5, attempting to explain and reacting too sensitively is moving into C. And you remember this, Jeff, this is the ones you got wrong, is if you're explaining anything or you're looking hurt on your face, then you're taking C space when you're not supposed to.
Okay. All right.
Get to reflectively listen.
Okay, so this is interesting. So again, as an adult, you really only have 2 options. Mm-hmm. One is to reflectively listen, and the other is to agree to do something that this other person wants.
Yep.
Right? Okay, so to do anything else, which would be this next rule, attempt to explain yourself or become sensitive yourself, that's taking up child space that that you want to really be giving to your partner.
Yeah, and we look at it from a little more distance, Jeff. You can see when this lattice isn't guaranteed, isn't there, there's a hole in the middle of the relationship. You're not going to be there for me. Whereas when you hang in there and you're recognizing the regression in that moment and you're going, I'm there. Come on, talk to me. Tell me what you need. Tell me what you need. Now, after 4 minutes, if it's getting abusive, you can pull away and go, look, all you're doing is anger. Talk to me when you can deal with this. I don't want you to get abused.
Right. I like that 4-minute rule.
Yeah.
Because 4 minutes is a long time, but you can most people can endure it.
Yeah, you can hang in there for 4 minutes.
You can hang in there for 4 minutes.
And be there. But when this lattice is in place, you can see why it stabilizes the highest stages, because the give and take is really working at a level of receptivity and responsiveness that they can count on.
Mm-hmm.
So now we can get deeper into shadow, into the complexity, and I know you're there for me. So you see how crucial this lattice is?
Yeah,
This
totally.
is the container at the relational stage that you're not going to be able to handle the upper stages and the intensity that comes online unless this roadway is working real well in the relationship.
Yeah.
What number are we up to, by the way? I shouldn't number these.
Yeah. The 12 rules. I think we're at 6.
Yeah. Avoid regressing into C when you're supposed to be at A during poor quality displays of C. So this is the anger. We already talked about it. You got to avoid it. You got to expect it occasionally. You got to be the adult in the room and put your big boy and big girl pants on and hang in there. This is just part of intimacy. The next one.
Rule 7.
Okay. Excuse me. When at C, this one's crucial. When at child, raise only one issue at a time. You only get to raise one issue at a time. Why? Can you feel that one, Jeff?
Oh, yeah. Otherwise, it's just a barrage, a tantrum.
Right. It floods the other person with more complexity and more feeling than they can possibly handle at that moment. And people conceptually in their head always want to develop supporting evidence like they're in a courtroom, as if that's going to let the other person understand what's going on. No, it's going to drag them into C. So you raise one issue at a time because there's some awareness the other person's hanging on and trying to assimilate what you're saying on this.
Yep.
So that's a pretty important one, huh?
I would say so, yes.
What number are we on?
I believe 8.
Use prefixes and suffixes when you're mind reading from child. Use prefixes and suffixes when you're mind reading from child. Do you know what mind reading is, Jeff?
No.
So this is Virginia Satir's term. It's telling the other person why they're doing something. It's from a distance, you're drawing conclusions about the motives, intention, and developmental history about the other person. That can be infuriating because it's a boundary violation. Does that make sense?
Totally.
So the prefixes and the suffix, this is a prefix. You know, I may be out in left field on this one, but my sense is you really don't like to hear problems. Am I right? Am I right is the suffix. What effect does that have on the communication, would you say?
Well, you're not really laying it on me. You're
Right.
suggesting, you're floating it.
Right. I'm saying.
And asking, does that resonate? Does that make sense?
Right. I'm keeping the relational quality going rather than just accusing you of it. Because you probably remember in one of the other presentations is distortion rate, how often what you think the motive of your spouse is versus what their motive actually is. In the very best relationships, there's a 50% distortion rate. Everyone else approaches 100% distortion. And it's amazing we even survived given the level of chaos that we have. And of course, it's all projection and not realizing our shadow. But that's where we are. And we're going to have to develop systems to really cope with it. Okay, so moving on. We're almost. The next one. Signal a switch from A to C, from adult to child. For example, are you done? Can I tell you what I felt? So you can see, and we've already said this in dialogue previously, you're really showing your spouse that you want to weigh in, but even more so, you're very much aware that when they're in child, you're going to honor that position that they're in and that it's safe to give it up at this point.
Right. So rule 9 here we're saying that if we want to, we've been in the adult role.
Yeah.
Now we want to signal that we want to move into the child role and we want to be seen and heard.
Absolutely. And you can do it that way. You know, are you done? Can I tell you what I think? You just got to let them know that I'm switching positions. And as a lot of couples come in and tell me when I teach them this, he took my seat when I was at A and I wasn't ready to give it up. Because it becomes a conscious lattice as you're in the middle of content that's emotionally laden. Is this 10?
Rule 10.
Control the intensity or stop talking. So if it starts too hot, that's Gottman's work. A hot start, he called it, when he was studying couples. You're not going to recover from a hot start. A hot start can be, you know what? I can't believe you. It's probably not going to go real well.
Right.
You really just want to pull away. What? And then I call that spat weld, the pulling away. Fine. But at least you're not going to C and doing a lot of damage at that moment. If it's too hot, get out of it. It's not going to work. The takeoff is going to end up in a crash.
Yep. All right. Rule 11, pure child is inherently attractive.
It's inherently attractive. Can you feel why?
Yeah. Children are attractive.
You got a big smile on your face. I love it. Yeah.
They're sweet. You want to love them. You know, you want to nurture them. You want to take care of them.
Right. Exactly. It resonates in all of us. When you never call me when you're late, when that gets transmuted into, where were you? You know, I had these horrible fantasies that something happened to you. Immediately they're going to go, oh, darn, I'm sorry. I should have called you. God, that made me sick thinking that.
Yeah.
You see how inherently attractive that is?
Yeah, it is.
It's like the evolutionary seeds are there to develop that circuitry that needs to be there. But for some reason, we're still shying away from that. And you and I talked about that, of getting from stage, the relational to first love, is we so much want that intimacy, but we're still turning away. Can you feel that with me?
Yeah.
And it's only with the intent that I'm going there and being conscious that these moments arise, that we get to that first love where you can feel the love and the connection ongoing. You can initiate it with an eye contact. You know, it's always there. It's the joy we feel in meditation, the ever present. But in intimacy, you have to hang on in order to do it.
And this is that stage beyond relational that you call first love. Just give us the 2 or 3 sentence description of that.
So, excuse me. In first love, remember, we're giving up the pre-trans fallacies that the earliest stage is the best thing. And we're living in the abundance of what a person does day in and day out to build your life with you. And it's not the 15% wrong that determines the state experience. It's the 85% right. So for Christine, you know, the easy ones for me is when I see her working really hard and getting things done and contributing, dealing with our children. I mean, I live in gratitude for what she's doing. And that's what we do, whether in our individual practices or our intimate practices. And you can see it promotes this primordial type soup that just encourages more evolution rather than the criticalness, you know, that really is an artifact of the biology going off that is in fear of the danger.
Yep.
Kind of makes sense?
Absolutely. And gratitude is just an amazingly powerful tool, you know, our practice.
Yes. And
to be grateful about your relationship with each other. Wow. That is so, so powerful.
Right. And You can see how it's easier to do this when the structure of the AC is at the relational level and you're not hitting smack dab into these ugly CC signs.
Right.
Because a lot of people take 3 days to recover from that.
Exactly. No, if you get this organized and civilized and still have the juiciness of the child and the adult and the wonderful, manifestations of that, then you can move on to gratitude. It's sort of natural. It's the next thing you would do.
Yeah, I developed this before my awareness of Integral. And you can see when I saw Integral, I finally started figuring out, oh my Lord, that's why I was developing these systems. I was responding to what was emerging, watching the train wreck that couples were showing me.
Yeah.
And, and everyone has these stories in their own application of Integral. It just was an epiphany of the lattice it provides.
Yeah.
And that's where the AC part. So we're almost done. Let's finish this and share. And we already did Pure C. Oh, we are done, Jeff. So we are done with it. I didn't realize I think we lost count along the way.
Yeah. Well, that the child is inherently attractive is, I think, rule number 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good one to end on, wasn't it?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so very good. Yeah, that really helps me to understand the power of consciously re-inhabiting these earlier stages and what juice it brings to one's life. And, we can do it on our own in aspects of our life, but what a blessing it is to be able to do it with an intimate partner for those of us who are so blessed to have one who will do it with you.
Right. I mean, it's a lot of couples never get the benefit of the postmodern potential of the relationship because, men used to just suck it up and go it alone and kind of die from that pain, not realizing that their spouse was there to carry some of the bandwidth for them. And how it becomes such a win-win interchange to do this. So even the relational stage is, quite an achievement when you look at all the millennia of how long we've been actually doing this.
Yeah. All right, Tom. Well, thank you so much.
More than happy.
Really appreciate getting this exploration through this territory, and happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day to everybody out there.
Yeah, to you and Christine, and to Chuck and me, and to everybody out there. Absolutely.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
I know.